Welcome to the fourth episode of the First Experience. You probably know what this is by now, but if you don't, please go watch previous episodes of this series where I explain what this is. For the final time, I am joined by another TECHNICBOTS forum member, Ellen Sun, who specialized in mostly scouting and outreach. This is quite a lengthy interview, so buckle in. If you want to see future episodes, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more. Enjoy the interview. Hello, Ellen. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So why don't you just briefly describe yourself?
My name's Ellen. I'm a rising college freshman. I've been in my FTC team 8565 for 3 years now, and I was the scouting lead on the team, and I also worked on a bit of outreach.
Nice. So when did you start getting into First in general?
So I'd say I joined the team first in sophomore year, 10th grade, but I first knew of them when I was in 7th grade when I attended this summer camp called Gigawatt, which was to teach girls about STEM and technology. So basically the TECHNICBOTS, they arrived at the camp, they kind of taught us about robotics and what they did, as well as had us run our own EV3 robots, and I just remember being very impressed and fascinated by them. So 3 years later, they opened up applications to their team, so I just applied and joined.
Nice. So you were not involved in any other First event before you joined FTC?
No.
Oh, so you always listen to a lot of people that try to give this thing that, oh, you have to go up the chain from FLL to FTC and then FRC, you have to start really early. Would you agree with that in any capacity?
Well, it does have some truth to it. Like if you start all the way down to FLL Explorer, you definitely build up more experience over time, as well as like more of an idea how to present, how to build robots. But I would say that starting late isn't a bad thing at all. You just have to work harder to catch up to everyone else's learning experience.
So when we talk about passion, when did that passion for robotics really come into play? Did that come after, like, immediately after you joined FTC, or did it kind of come after some time?
I think it was sort of there when I joined FTC because I was already really interested in, like, I was really excited to be on this team. But as you said, like, the more you work on something, the more passionate you get about it. So I think it was like during maybe the mid of the first season that I started getting more excited about robotics.
Right. So did you start doing scouting as soon as you joined the team?
Yes.
So why don't you just briefly describe what scouting is? Because when you think of robotics, you don't necessarily think of scouting.
Mm-hmm. So scouting is more of the game strategy aspect instead of like, something like building or coding. So essentially, I built this back an app of a scouting app where all the scouters would go out and watch each match. So essentially, instead of relying on official data, we have one team member watching each robot on the field, so 4 at a time, and then they would record data on this app that I built, send it back to our Google Sheets, where it was just this giant spreadsheet that would take all this data, analyze it, and then we would be able to see like which team would technically score the most points on their own, who was the best at endgame, tele-op, etc. And so based on that, we would be able to select our alliance correctly in the semifinals.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems that it's worked pretty well for you, considering your incredible performance in not just this season, but also last season.
Yeah.
So when you did FTC, what would you say is your most memorable moment in all of the time you've done it?
I would say my most memorable moment is during the World Championship Conference when I was giving a presentation, about what I just talked about, my scouting system. It was like the culmination of everything I'd done for the past 3 years, all the work I'd work on, and I was able to like show it in front of a room of probably like 100, 200 people.
So you were like the only speaker and there was just a huge audience?
Yeah, me and my coach were up there, and then I remember this presentation before, the room was like half filled, so I was feeling kind of confident. I was like, maybe there won't be that many people, and then the presentation ended, and then they announced ours, and then a whole bunch of people just came in, and I was like,
Yeah, no, I can understand that. It must be pretty difficult to speak in front of that many people, especially when it's a culmination, as you say, of 2 years of everything you've done on the team. So when you're speaking to an audience, did you consider yourself, you obviously consider yourself extremely nervous, but how did you sort of cope with that nervousness?
I think part of it is because I've been working on this for so long, I'm extremely familiar with, the scouting system in general. So it's not like even if I kind of forgot part of the presentation, I would just be able to continue it because I would know what to say.
Right.
Yeah.
So when people give presentations, do you think it's better to like essentially know the material super big yourself, and that way your script won't be that as necessary?
I think it's best to definitely know it really well yourself, but also you should have some sort of script some sort of outline to follow so that you're just not up there ad-libbing everything. But it definitely is better if you actually know everything and not just relying on like strict script.
Right. So at the World's Championships, obviously you present this, basically win the entire thing, you win First Inspire, and now you're going to Worlds. So how did that feel to you when they heard 8565 TECHNICBOTS being called for the winner of the Inspire Award?
It was very shocking and exciting. I mean, the build up to it definitely gave us like some preparedness that they were going to say 565, but at first when they said, okay, we're going to announce the Inspire Award winners now, we were all really nervous. And then I remember some of my team members, we were all holding up our phones recording that, saying like, just in case they announce 8565, we'll have a recording of it. And then it actually happened, and so we all got. It was really shocking and surprising for all of us.
Right. And so in the previous awards, were you ever announced for the winner of any other awards at the award ceremony?
No, so we didn't hear our name at all throughout the whole ceremony. So we were getting kind of nervous because usually, if you remember at like regionals or just regular tournaments, they would have like, even if you did win Inspire, they'd at least have you as runner up for like one of the another awards. So we were kind of expecting the same formula. But here it was like, if you win Inspire, you can't get anything else, I guess. So if we didn't hear our name throughout the entire thing, so we were like, maybe we didn't win anything.
You go to First Global, and well, now you're going to First Global, but let's flash back another year, and after, there was no Worlds in the Ultimate Goal season. It was all virtual, but you got an email that essentially said like, you're going to represent the United States, and you only really did Texas Cup. So how did that feel?
Yeah, I feel like that was probably even more shocking than at Worlds, because at least with Worlds, you have some sort of build up to it. You're like, oh, that sounds like our team. I feel like we're going to win. But this one just came out of nowhere, especially because there was no Worlds. So we were just expecting the season to end and just have like off-season research projects as normal. And then out of the blue, Coach Fong got an email that's saying, oh, your team's going to represent Team USA. And like when I got the news, I didn't even know what that was. So I was just very shocked that we were going to be representing our country, in this first global challenge.
Yeah, and for people watching that don't necessarily know what First Global is, why don't you describe what it is?
Yeah, so First Global is essentially kind of like First, but on a worldwide scale. So you have like this Olympic-style robotics game, which one team representing each country. So during the year that I actually participated in, we had this research project where we all researched this. There was like a problem we had to focus on. We had to invent some sort of solution using technology and STEM to solve it. And then along the way, we also got to work with other countries. So for example, we worked with Team Zimbabwe. We communicated with them over Zoom several times at very interesting time zones.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah.
So what made you go with Team Zimbabwe?
So I believe we focused on similar problems in the beginning. So working with other teams was actually like phase 2 after we decided on a problem first. And so we were working on like cleaning up trash from the oceans and rivers, and they were doing something very similar but on land. So we figured if we could kind of combine our projects, we could clean up, both.
Right, and then you also win First Global, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah. So how do they announce the awards of First Global?
So there wasn't like a worldwide Zoom meeting or anything because I don't think the bandwidth could hold it. But they had like this recorded video they sent out where they told every team to film their reactions ahead of time if they did win First Global. So we filmed that first, and then they announced it. They're like, and the winner of this Grand Design Challenge Award is Team USA and Team Zimbabwe. And they would just play our reaction there as if we were reacting in live time, which is really funny. But it was just also really amazing to actually win First Global as well.
Yeah, so it's an incredible experience, and now you're representing the United States 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Will you be doing First Global since you have college and stuff?
Yeah, I have college, so I'll be in college, so I won't actually be going to Switzerland. So we're leaving that to the younger kids. But I think I'll probably just still check in on them and see how they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And so, speaking of checking in on the kids, do you ever plan on joining the First alumni program?
Yeah, I think I will, because First has like really helped me in like both my life and my college application. I think it would be best to give back.
So when you look at the added benefits of robotics, you always look at the college application. You always look at like, oh, I can program in Java now or something like that. But what do you really think is the biggest takeaway and the biggest thing that you've learned through FTC?
I think more than just like technical skills and having some awards on your application, it teaches you a lot about like soft skills like teamwork, communication, leadership, even presentation skills. So I think that that part of robotics is usually not very noticed a lot because when people think of robotics, it's like coding, building software, but you also learn how to like talk with team members over long periods of time and present things in conferences or in front of judges or even like outreach programs where you're teaching kids.
Right. Speaking of these outreach programs, which is pretty much how you got involved in the first place, no pun intended. So talk me through exactly what goes into say I want to host a program to have X amount of people join and we can teach them about robotics. There are lots of things that you have to consider when doing that. So why don't you just go over them?
Yeah, so I'll just give an example. So we've been teaching BGC Kids Boys and Girls Club, basically the Boys and Girls of an underrepresented community in Dallas for quite a while, I think like 3 or 4 years. And then, so a lot of that goes into, first you have to create like a curriculum to actually teach them first. So I was also part of that where I just kind of laid out what they would do for each week across the semesters. Then you have to like recruit people in your team or maybe reach out other teams. I know 18227 joined us a couple of times as like TAs, teachers to actually teach this stuff to the kids. Then there was a lot of communication between us and the BGC clubs. Like say how many kids are going to join? Are they going to come back every week? And then there are some sessions where the kids join like 15 minutes late and we just were waiting there trying to email them and seeing what's happening. So there's a lot of like logistics that goes into planning an outreach event.
Right. So would you say that becoming extremely organized is like a prerequisite to hosting an outreach event?
Yeah, kind of, because you really need to get everything sorted out.
Yeah, for sure. So besides the BGC example that you provided, would you say that you've also helped other teams, not just FTC, but other leagues as well?
Yeah, definitely. So RA565, we mentor other FTC teams. Like we did a couple mentor sessions with you guys, tier 1. We also mentored a lot of FLL teams. I personally stuck with one FLL team for all 3 years that I've been in FTC. And we actually have like this sort of mentoring ladder where we bring along from teams that we bring along members from teams we mentor to like mentor these FLL teams so that eventually if we want other things they can continue this mentoring. For example, one of the FLL teams that we mentored, Free Wi-Fi, we've been mentoring them for about 3 years, and eventually our mentorship helped them actually advance the World Championship alongside us, and that was a really cool accomplishment to see them do.
Right. So talk about the sort of, I want to say, triangle that you kind of have with FTC teams and then other FTC teams and then FLL teams.
Yeah, so I think it's a really innovative thing that we've been doing. Like we mentor another FTC team, and then we just don't just mentor them. We also help them mentor other FLL teams, like teams that are kind of under FTC, so that eventually they can also grow a mentorship alongside us and also expand more, which I think is like kind of an exponential effect rather than just linear.
Right, because you're helping teams teach other teams,
Yeah.
and they can clearly do a lot more. So would you think that doing that is just as important as just like mentoring an FLL team, or would you say it's more important than just mentoring an FLL team?
I think in some ways it can be more important because while you're mentoring an FL team, it's definitely good for that team. But if you're also, helping this FTC team learn how to mentor, you're helping 2 teams at once, but you're also helping a potential amount of other teams that this FTC team might go on and mentor by themselves.
Right. Okay, so when you go to World's Championship, the amount of stress that you probably would have been through. Well, when we talked to John and Champers, they both said that they had to stay up a lot in Worlds, like 3 a.m. hours. So why don't you just like talk about like the effect that had on you? Did you become stressed out about that? Because both Chambers and John were like, nah, I didn't get really stressed out about it.
I think I was under less stress than probably most of the builders, or definitely less than the drive team, because they actually had to stand up there and drive. But in a way, I was also like double checking the scouting system a lot to make sure there were no errors, nothing bad would happen. And I was like also prepping for my presentation, which was very stressful because I didn't know, how many people were going to show up. Something was going to go wrong. I remember the week before Worlds, our team meetings, which usually were already pretty late into the night, went on even later. It was like 2 a.m. or something that we drove home. We finally ended the meeting. And during Worlds, actually, we had to stay up a lot also overnight to, get people to fix the robot or check the data and check on other teams. it was just a very intense process.
Right, right. I'm gonna say this again. It paid off. So yeah, I guess you could say that it was maybe well spent.
Yeah.
So you're headed to All In, right?
Mhm.
So walk me through the process of how your robotics career is sort of intertwined with your application into All In.
So during my, well, actually, my Common App main essay was essentially about how I grew through robotics, not just technically, but also, soft skills, leadership, etc. I think part of this is definitely what got me into the first phase of Olin's applications. So the way that their applications work is actually a little bit different. You don't just submit an essay and get accepted. You have to, there's like a phase one, where it's called Candidates Week. So essentially, they would actually fly you over to Olin, and they would like introduce you for a week to Olin's facilities, how things work around there, the clubs, teachers, and then they would have you like do a little design challenge, get to know other people who applied. But this year was all on Zoom, but it was still a really cool process where you learned about Olin, and how they worked. And then during that candidate week, they would interview you, and so to see if you were like you could make it to the next phase where you get accepted or not.
Right. So in this interview, you obviously made it to the next step. So now flash to first World's Championships, and you gave that presentation, and then what happened?
Yeah, so when I gave that presentation, the room where I presented was located next to all these college fair booths where they were like talking to kids who walked by in the World's Championship, and Olin was one of them. So at that time, I was actually on the wait list, and then so I spotted the Olin lady, and then I went over and talked to her. I was like, "Hey, I applied to your college, and I was on the wait list, but I'm still really, really interested in attending Olin because I really found that I liked it, and I think it's the right place for me." And so we kind of had a conversation, and eventually, come May 1st, and I found out I was actually accepted off the wait list right away. So some of these things you really just have to step out there and go talk to people to make sure you're interested.
Yeah, and so would you say that it was hard to really this is like a superior figure to you, and then you have to walk up and like strike up a conversation with
Yeah,
them?
it was definitely kind of nerve-wracking because I was like, man, what if I go up there and they think I'm too pushy and they just kick me off the wait list or something?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but it paid off in the end, so.
So come COVID, and now you guys have this very different thing going on that you can't just put outreach events in person. You can't just go mentor people normally because, well, now there's a whole pandemic that you have to worry about. So what changed with your outreach events that you posted when the COVID came?
Yeah, so when COVID came, obviously we had to move essentially everything to Zoom. For like that year, I think we basically had like one in-person event, and that even was like partially Zoom. So I think that being on Zoom kind of helped us in a way that gave us more flexibility to who we could, reach out to. Because if you're in person, you can only have people in the local area come over because there's like limits to how far people can travel. But if we're on Zoom, we could invite a lot more people to our outreach events. Like for example, during this one BDC event we held with BDC kids, we invited someone from New York to come and, watch over and mentor these kids. And during our FUC workshops, we were able to get Team Zimbabwe to speak at our conference. It was just, I think that being on Zoom, even though it's a bit less personal than having it in person, there's also some advantages to it because we invite.
Yeah, so the turnout definitely increased. Like more people came to your events.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you do COVID. You had to. Is there any like huge event that you had to post that's solely because of COVID?
Well, one thing that I can think of is where we 3D printed a bunch of PPE masks, ear guards for healthcare workers. So essentially, when pandemic hit, we were all wondering like, I know everyone was kind of freaking out because there was a huge PPE shortage at the beginning. It's not like now where you can buy a pack of masks at Target. So we like searched up some things, and then we found out we could actually 3D print just face shields, the structure here, and then we just buy a bunch of plastic shields. So we had like this assembly line where, I think Champers and Max were 3D printing on their printers. We had like assembly people who were putting together the masks. I personally was in charge of like reaching out to dental offices or healthcare offices to contact them, see if they needed PPE and delivering it to them. So it was just like this huge event that lasted for like a couple months where we just sending out PPE to a lot of different people.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that really another important thing that our PPE program did was that we were able to bring in a lot of other teams to help also print out the PPE for the community. and like just upskill the process immensely compared to just one person or one printer. We also got like UTD professors into this. I just remember that on Slack, our printers were running like 24/7 all the time. We had to constantly keep supplying, printer materials. It was just a very large process that was able to help, I think, like hundreds of healthcare workers around the community. So I'm really proud.
Yeah, for sure. And then the contribution with other teams as well, it's huge. And I think that when you joined FTC and then you looked at what you did with the PEPE program, did you ever imagine you'd be doing something as scaled up as that program was?
I definitely don't think I would have imagined that ever before because, when I first was introduced to FIRST, I was like, oh, it's building a robot to run around the field. I didn't think that we would have all these outreach programs and all these processes to help people around the community. It was like pretty unimaginable.
Yeah, and this goes to say like judges and people who want to or interested in FIRST, adults should definitely pick up judging because it's really incredible what teenagers can do.
Yeah.
I bet that material was not very cheap. Yeah, so how did you go about raising funds in order to really scale up this operation?
So in addition to like just GoFundMe on our website, we also had a lot of summer camps, like our FLL summer camp, no FTC crash course camp, where we like take a fee to teach people about FTC, get them ready to join FIRST. So that helped us a lot in our fundraising and raising money for all this. We also had like this program called the Youth Summer Program, something along the lines. I can't remember. But we had that during COVID to help kids bored during quarantine to learn about, have some fun activities, learn about robotics. And even though that one was free, we had like our GoFundMe linked up there. A lot of people donated through all our activities. So we were able to raise quite a lot of money to keep supplying all our PPE.
Yeah, and how much PPE do you think you made?
I think the number was over 3,000 ear guards and 1,500 face shields.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's lots. But yeah, so it's clear that this operation was a huge success.
Yes.
And it definitely helped during judging.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you do these outreach events, do you have your judging in mind, or are you just going to help the community?
Well, when we did our PPE, for example, we were just thinking of like ways to go out and help this huge problem that suddenly came about. We weren't really thinking of if judging was going to be a problem because we didn't even know if DC was going to be a thing. But I think when you're first doing this event, there's a lot more effort you put into this event that if you wanted to just impress the judges, you could have gone to like a different activity easily. We were having like at first meetings every single day, 5 p.m. for like 2-3 hours, working on organizing all this planning for PPE, ordering materials. Chambers and Max were running the printer all the time, and I remember like Max was saying he had to wake up at 4 a.m. when the printer went off to replace all the filleting, and I was like calling all these companies and emailing them. And the amount of work that went into it was definitely more motivated by that we wanted to help people, get over this pandemic than just winning an award. Even though when we go into the competition, we're trying to organize all our outreach events to impress the judges, I think that when we first plan these events, we're not really thinking, oh, this will impress the judges a lot.
It's way bigger than just FTC at that point.
Yeah.
It's really to a point where you're actually making tangible change for the world in general.
Yeah, it's not even like related to, in a way it's kind of related to robotics because we have to use our skills, but it's not like we're trying to teach people robotics, which is still helpful, but this is helping people, face off against the pandemic, which is really big.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are kind of skeptical of robotics teams because these are a bunch of teenagers. What can they do? But would you recommend everybody, or like at least people with children that could enter robotics, to really maybe go to one of these events and then see how incredible it is?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that. Like even if you have no kids and you're too old, I think it's still very inspiring to go to an FEC event, see like use a bunch of teenagers, 16, 17-year-olds building a robot that can, move around and do all these crazy things, and like learning about their outreach events and what they can do if you really push them to the limit.
Right. And so a lot of people draw parallels between an actual organization and how it outreaches and how it hosts events for its people, and FTC teams that host outreach events to help people, get into first or whatever, right? So do you agree with this comparison?
I would say it's sort of true. Because when we do outreach events, there is definitely like some sort of, I don't want to say advertising, but we do want to bring them in first because it's genuinely a good program to be in where you can learn a lot more. But also our outreach events are also about helping people learn about robotics. If you want to learn about robotics but you don't want to be in first, just we still want to teach you things. I think that other than just teaching them about STEM, we also bring to kids who have never had the opportunity before to do robotics this kind of new idea, this new future that maybe they can grow up and become an engineer or a computer scientist or something that they've never considered before. And I think that's a lot more important than just bringing them into first generally.
Correct. I definitely agree with that. I think that a lot of pitfalls that not just teams but other corporations and nonprofit organizations fall into is that they're just sort of preaching to the choir. Like they're saying, get involved in first, and everybody's already in first.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that it is way more important, as you said, to get a place without any access, and you're really doing more of an impact there.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so walk me through how your personality really changed when you finished doing FTC, because you knew yourself before you did FTC, and then after you've done FTC, you probably changed a lot. So how much can you attribute that to robotics?
I think FTC really changed me quite a lot because it's such a big, event that you have to work on year long that it can't not do anything to you. I remember sophomore year, I was very, very more withdrawn than now. I'd never given any kind of presentation or led any kind of outreach program other than just small volunteering at summer camps or something, which is essentially very minor compared to what you have to do in FTC. I think that by going through FTC, the process of first communicating with other team members, you learn a lot about teamwork. You have to giving presentations in front of judges improves your own presentation skills, and all the outreach events that you do, leading these events and talking to kids personally, it just made me improve my own soft skills a lot more.
Right. And also, when you work in a team with everybody else, you're working in a team with 15 people. So, and the conflicts that you get into between these people is a lot more significant than just two friends having an argument, because you have college applications on the line, or really whether you're going to win or not. So how did that really change your conflict resolution skills as you go into FTC?
I think that for conflicts, our team was relatively okay with that. We never had any sort of big scale argument that had people not talking to each other for a week or something. But I think for all these disagreements that we had, we tried to we definitely made a lot of pro cons lists. We debated for a while. We tried our best to kind of resolve to an agreement where both sides would be happy and it would still be the best choice for what we wanted to proceed with.
Right. Okay. So there are a lot of people watching here that are not involved at first. They probably, maybe they know what it is, but they don't really understand it fully. What do you think is the number one reason that anybody should get into first?
I think that first, as a pro, it just helps you in all aspects of your life. If you want to learn more about programming or coding, building, all those technical things, you can do it in first. If you want to learn more about, the business side, the logistics of organizing an event or fundraising, you can do that in first as well, because our team definitely needs a lot of fundraisers. And if you want to learn more about, teamwork, presentation skills, leadership, that's definitely also in first. So I think it's just an all-rounder activity that can benefit you in all aspects.
And so you think that every single person has a place in not just an FTC team, but a team in general?
Yeah, definitely. Even if you're not interested in hardware or software, there's the business side. I know that our team captain, Melody, she works mostly on logistics, but she still helps the team immensely because of everything that she organizes.
Right. So throughout doing FTC, you probably faced obstacles that you could not really clear. And maybe that'll be obstacles like trying to give a presentation in front of a bunch of people. But What do you think is the biggest obstacle you faced in all the time you've done FTC, and then how did you go about resolving it?
I would say the biggest obstacle so far is when I first started first, because as I said, I joined pretty late, like 10th grade, when everyone else in the team essentially had been there for a couple of years. Some of them even for like since kindergarten, so they knew what they were doing. And I just kind of joined. I was like learning all these new terms, like what's an alliance? What are the robots doing on the field? I think that I had to work especially hard to kind of get going with the process, like reach that learning curve. And with the scouting system, I was like going on Stack Overflow a lot, searching up solutions to what exactly I had to code here. But I think after like sort of getting to that point where you understand what's going on, it kind of you just keep learning after that, and it gets a lot better.
Right. People might be a little dissuaded from like, there's so much to learn when you do this. What do you think is some recommendations you can give to people to sort of like be able to manage this extreme learning curve?
I think the number one thing is definitely ask for help for the people around you. Like on your team, there are definitely going to be people who are more experienced. So, don't be afraid to just reach out and ask, like, hey, what I'm supposed to do here? I feel they'll definitely be glad to help you because you're one team. And, you can even ask your coach on some advice. And there's more like there's YouTube channels that other FTC teams run that help like rookies out. There's like podcasts like the ones you guys hold. I think there's just a lot of resources there for you to get used to this really quickly.
Yeah, for sure. FTC takes up a lot of time. How much hours per week would you say FTC takes up?
I would say like depending on if you have like an event that week, how busy it is, maybe 10 to 20 hours a week, maybe even more. I'm not sure because our team meetings alone are like 5 hours or maybe even more. And then I remember during 11th grade, my second year, when I was getting a lot more involved in events and things, I would have like several events a week where I'd have to teach BGC kids or get online with Zoom to work with other people. And there's also your own part in the robot that you have to work on. Like I was constantly trying to improve my scouting system. So it's definitely a huge time commitment that you have to be ready for.
Right. And being ready for this time commitment, trying to balance out other extracurriculars that you have in your life, your schoolwork, and also robotics, it must be pretty difficult to do. So how did you go about managing?
So what I did was I made sort of a planner, which everyone should be doing anyway, to plan out my time. So if I knew that, Saturday nights we have a long team meeting, so I would just try to get my homework done before that, just not worry about it after 1 a.m. And if I had like an event in the middle of the week that I knew would take up my evening, I would try to plan ahead of that and get my school stuff done. So it all comes down to really just managing your time by splitting up all your activities and make sure you're not overloaded in one night.
Right. And when you did FTC, did you do any other extracurriculars in your school?
I did this one extracurricular called TSA, Technology Student Association. It's essentially like this association where it looks like a school club where you like go out and do competitions regarding like technology. Like I did one called Webmaster. We were in a team to create like a website and you presented that. So at the same time, I was kind of working on that.
Who did you do an internship with?
So I did an internship with this professor at UT Southwestern, along with some other kids in that team. It was over, I think, last summer, or was it 2 years ago? Yeah, last summer. And so we worked on essentially creating this website to bring awareness to pediatric cancer. And then I think that was like the first time that I was working at a level maybe even higher than first in a way, because it's not like a website where people are like, oh, that was created by kids. This is a website where you have to make it professional, and that actually makes it very serious for everyone to look at.
Right. And then when you make this website, what are some like design ideas that you learned from here and then you applied that onto robotics? And another thing is, did you go and then change the website for TECHNICBOTS after you worked on your website with UT Southwestern?
So I actually was not working on the website. I think that is to another team member. But I think that working on the website kind of gave me an idea of like how to design it in ways that people can get around more easily. So I kind of modified my scouting app for that, because our scouting app is also on a web page where you have to lay out things in a way that makes sense to team members and especially parents who sometimes don't really understand first that well. So they actually we have to make it more accessible for them.
So parents do the scouting as well?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we didn't have parent scouting, we would have like 2 team members left to do scouting, which is definitely not enough.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so when you go into the judging rooms before every competition, you get like, when I talked to other team members, they were saying like, we've rehearsed it so many times, we're not gonna sweat it. But like, do you consider yourself like, wow, this is like a lot and there's a lot on the line here? Or do you consider it as like, okay, I got this?
In a way, the presentation is like the easy part because, as you said, we've rehearsed this so many times that you basically have your lines like embedded in your head. But after that, the 10-minute Q&A session is where it can get a little bit stressful because even if you do practice Q&A, they can always pop out like a random question that leaves you completely blindsided, and then you have to kind of ad-lib it to answer it correctly.
So we talk about the girls' role in an FTC team, and if we go back a couple of decades or maybe a couple of years, we may consider the robotics as I want to say a event or maybe a sport, as a male-dominated thing, but that's starting to change, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in our team, even though we like open applications to everyone, there's still like a minority of girls. So in a way, it's still things are still progressing, getting better. But I think that the role of girls in a robotics team is definitely improving because now there are all these programs that reach out to girls specifically, like the one that introduced me to FIRST, and I think it's definitely getting better.
Yeah, for sure. And also, there's always this stigma that I've heard is that the girls have to do the marketing and outreach, and that the guys have to do the hardware and software. Do you agree with this in any capacity?
Yeah, that's definitely not true at all. Like, even though I am in outreach a little bit, I still work on like some technical stuff with scouting apps and the scouting background data sheet. And we have guys on the team who Shoku, for example, prefers to work on like marketing and outreach. Like, yeah, if you want to do something, just go for it. There's not really, even though there might be some sort of stigma or stereotype around it, I think it's best to just don't care about what other people may think and just go for it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do mainly marketing and outreach. I'm a guy. I can still do it, I guess. Yeah, I think it's so cool. So what do you think is the FTC season that affected you the most?
I would say definitely the first season, partially because the last 2 were virtual, and even though First tried its best to like make it work online, it's still not as effective as being there in person, doing everything yourself. And also, it's the first season where I actually have to learn all this terminology and all this protocol for First, as well as get used to presenting everything. And I think that was what helped me a lot in overcoming my former self, which was more shy and withdrawn.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me here today. It's been great. So I will link all of your socials in the description of the video. You guys can leave a comment if there's another person that you'd like to do, another team that you'd like to have me interview. And yeah, please do not forget to like,